On a beautiful starlit night, a princess was born as the second child to the reigning king of Tadon, a nation historically guided by astrology. The royal attendants gasped in sheer horror as they gazed down upon the newborn's face. The infant possessed blazing crimson eyes and stark white hair, instantly terrifying everyone in the room. Her red eyes mirrored a dragon's gaze, manifesting a dreaded curse born when the prosperous kingdom slaughtered the ancient beasts long ago. Fearing the dark curse would strike them if they killed the child, the panicked servants decided to hide her before the queen awakened. They commanded the royal mage to seal the cursed infant inside a tower, condemning her to a lifetime of absolute imprisonment. The conspirators buried her existence entirely, planning to tell the public that the child perished immediately after birth. Thus began the hidden tragic life of Era Vijlith, the forgotten princess. The young princess slowly grew up, completely isolated from the rest of the world. She spent her formative years trapped within the suffocating walls of a small, dusty castle tower. Knowing absolutely nothing of the outside realm, Era found her only solace in her devoted nurse. Time drifted slowly in the gloomy confinement as the young girl learned to entertain herself in silence. Growing tall enough to reach the stone window ledge, she finally witnessed the vibrant world outside for the very first time. Gazing outwards, Era instantly realized her captive existence was profoundly unnatural compared to other children. When she questioned her imprisonment, her weeping nurse simply apologized and cited the king's absolute authority. The sorrowful nurse constantly showered the confused princess with desperate, tearful apologies. Following her beloved caregiver's tragic death, Era shut down emotionally and stopped speaking entirely. The dreary silence of her imprisonment shattered only on extremely rare occasions. A young girl began to occasionally peek into the lonely confines of the forgotten tower. Driven by sheer survival instinct, Era utilized a secret passage revealed by her dying nurse to infiltrate the royal library at night. Determined to survive in the unforgiving outside world, she relentlessly devoured the castle's accumulated knowledge. She eagerly absorbed countless medical texts, realizing her newfound skills could one day heal others. She dreamed of escaping to become a traveling apothecary, wondering desperately how she might conceal her cursed crimson eyes. Every single day, the lonely princess envisioned a bright future where she shared warm laughter with a genuine companion. Refusing to succumb to despair, Era clung fiercely to her optimistic dreams. She lost herself entirely in comforting visions of a liberated, joyful existence beyond the walls. The quiet illusion abruptly shattered when 14-year-old first princess Luna stormed into the dusty room. Luna glared down at Era, radiating inexplicable anger and bitter frustration. Ignoring her attendants' frantic warnings about secrecy, Luna viciously mocked Era's filthy clothes, terrible food, and unnerving stoicism. Luna desperately sought to assert her superiority as the firstborn, yet Era's complete lack of reaction infuriated her further. Scoffing in utter disgust, the older princess dismissed Era as both agonizingly annoying and hopelessly boring. Bored by the complete lack of tears, Luna callously turned her back on the captive girl. Luna and her anxious attendant departed hastily, plunging the tower back into absolute silence. Era sat perfectly still in the oppressive darkness of her stone prison. The young captive silently pondered the bizarre, unprovoked hostility of her older sister. Noticing the moon slipping behind thick clouds, Era decided it was time to retreat for the night. She moved like a phantom, quietly navigating the dark corridors of her secret escape route. Luna's cruel words echoed violently in Era's mind, forcing her to question the harsh reality of her cursed fate. Her heart pounded fiercely in her chest as a dark, life-altering realization began to finally take root. Demanding answers, the furious queen corners His Majesty about the catastrophic breach in their royal security. She sharply questions how the supposedly impenetrable tower seal could have possibly been broken. Deducing the catastrophic failure, the queen aggressively mocks the king for hiring a completely incompetent mage. Writhing in agonizing pain on the stone floor, the punished mage groans in sheer torment. Furious at the betrayal, the ruthless king banishes the broken mage from his kingdom forever. Heavy footsteps carve a solitary retreating path through the unforgiving snow-covered courtyard. Trembling with terror, an anxious attendant desperately reminds the angry king of the kingdom's dark prophecy. Rationalizing his cruelty, the king maliciously abandons Era in the freezing snow so her inevitable death will not count as outright murder. Banished into the raging blizzard, the frail princess wanders blindly through the blinding white storm. A desperate echoing cry for a father rings fruitlessly through the freezing palace halls. Trudging through the knee-deep drifts, Era fights bitterly against the biting winter gale. Struck by the harsh reality, the freezing girl realizes this brutal wasteland is the outside world she once dreamed of. Terror grips her freezing heart as she fears all her cherished hopes will completely vanish in the endless snow. Determined to survive, the resilient princess pushes her battered body onward through the relentless storm. Refusing to surrender so easily, Era fiercely reassures herself that her journey has only just begun. Her desperate footsteps crunch rhythmically through the deep, desolate winter woods. Stumbling upon a frozen corpse, the shivering exile softly apologizes as she strips away its heavy cloak for survival. Wrapped tightly in the stolen garment, she marches through the dark forest while chanting quiet reassurances to herself. The endless snow-dusted trees loom ominously over her tiny wandering figure. To her immense relief, the exhausted wanderer discovers a crumbling abandoned wooden shack hidden in the wilderness. She quickly inspects the ruined interior of her newfound shelter for any lingering threats or useful supplies. Driven by gnawing hunger, Era scours the frozen wilderness, desperately searching for anything to eat. She suddenly spots a cluster of unfamiliar wild plants clinging to a frostbitten bush. Recalling her secret midnight studies, the clever girl confidently identifies the vegetation as edible. Biting into the sweet morsel, Era marvels at the most delicious flavor she has ever tasted in her isolated life. Clutching her aching stomach in agonizing pain, the regretful princess realizes she severely misidentified the poisonous plant. 3 days later, the relieved survivor notes that her dangerous wound is finally healing properly. Overjoyed by her success, Era successfully crafts a working medicinal salve using the knowledge stolen from the royal library. Gazing at her homemade remedy, the hopeful apothecary wonders if she can actually sell it for survival. Nervously approaching a bustling market town, the hidden princess hesitates anxiously at the edge of the crowd. A satisfied customer eagerly purchases her medicine and promises to return for more. Heavy copper coins drop solidly into her grateful hands as she secures her very first sale. An observant merchant notes her hidden face but warmly praises her impressive skill with rare medicinal herbs. Overwhelmed with quiet triumph, Era rejoices that her medicine sold perfectly while her cursed identity remained entirely hidden. Realizing the importance of a professional appearance, she vows to acquire cleaner clothes to interact safely with her customers. Braving the agonizingly cold river water, the determined girl rigorously washes her hair and clothes to eliminate any stench. Shivering violently in the freezing air, Era desperately mutters frantic reassurances to maintain her sanity. Reflecting on her brutal exile, the forgotten princess acknowledges that her new life is flooded with relentless difficulties. Despite the endless pain, the resilient Era finally learns the invaluable life-saving art of enduring the unforgiving world. 2 years later, a booming voice suddenly calls out to the traveling medic to wait. Era pauses her journey as the heavy footsteps of a rugged client rush urgently toward her. The familiar man cheerfully greets her and asks if she can run a quick errand to the royal capital. Startled by the dangerous destination, the disguised princess hesitates nervously at the very mention of the capital. The client casually mentions a massive gathering of elite mages while grumbling about his personal disdain for magic users. Gripping her bag tightly, Era listens intently as the man asks if she has heard the latest royal rumors. He excitedly reveals that the legendary mage Kuro from Quandar has been officially invited to the palace. Desperate for a favor, the persistent customer leverages his history of buying her medicine to convince the hesitant girl. Weighing her precarious survival, Era realizes she might lose her crucial livelihood if she stubbornly refuses his request. Masking her deep anxiety, she reluctantly agrees to take the risky job with a forced smile. Reassuring herself that 2 entire years have passed, the exiled princess rationalizes that a simple errand will be completely safe. Elsewhere in the bustling capital, a lovesick Princess Luna swoons dramatically over the sheer handsomeness of the visiting mage Kuro. Luna gushes over the young mage's incredible politeness, admitting she fully expected the greatest mage of their time to be a withered old man. Despite the king's notorious hatred of magic, the spoiled princess openly wishes Kuro would permanently relocate to Tadung. Completely infatuated, Luna boldly declares to her anxious attendant that such a powerful, elegant man perfectly suits her. The terrified attendant frantically begs the princess to lower her voice lest the furious king discover her unauthorized outing. Brushing off the desperate warnings, the arrogant Luna proclaims that staying confined at home would only ruin her spectacular mood. Flaunting her absolute royal privilege, she boasts loudly that she can do whatever she pleases without consequence. Gazing smugly down from her lofty balcony, Luna laughs viciously about how deeply satisfying it is to look down on the commoners. Passing through the crowded streets below, a heavily cloaked Era quietly mutters about the weird, obnoxious woman laughing above. Luna's sharp predatory eyes catch sight of the suspiciously cloaked figure navigating the dense crowds beneath her. A chilling shock ripples violently through the older princess as she carefully scrutinizes the mysterious wanderer's familiar posture. Her mocking smile vanishes instantly as a deeply unsettling realization begins to dawn in her mind. Realizing her cursed younger sister is somehow still breathing, Luna stares down at the street in absolute disbelief. A wicked smirk quickly replaces her shock as she mockingly pities the desperately struggling girl. Completely unaware of the looming danger, Era successfully delivers her medicinal goods and receives a generous tip. Bowing politely, the disguised apothecary warmly thanks the merchant while securing her hard-earned coins. Relieved the mission is over, Era turns to leave, but freezing horror strikes as Luna's venomous voice casually greets her. Feigning innocent concern, the cruel princess interrogates Era about her shabby clothes before demanding to see her hidden face. In a swift, violently aggressive motion, Luna ruthlessly yanks the heavy hood away from her younger sister's head. Smirking at the exposed girl, Luna loudly remarks that she thought her wretched sister had died ages ago. The surrounding crowd gasps in unified terror as the chilling wind blows through Era's stark snow-white hair. Panicked commoners immediately shriek in horror at the sight of Era's cursed crimson eyes, screaming that she is a monstrous dragon in disguise. Reveling in the chaotic public terror, Luna offers a fake mocking apology for deliberately exposing her sister's demonic features. Luna sadistically mocks Era's rough hands and plain clothes, gloating that no cheap dye could ever hide those cursed eyes. Refusing to break under the humiliating public spectacle, Era firmly declares that she is no longer a poor, helpless victim. Luna erupts into condescending laughter, cruelly ordering her desperate sister to stop forcing such a pathetic, unconvincing, tough act. Standing remarkably tall amidst the terrified mob, Era fiercely declares that she is absolutely not the same weak girl she used to be. Luna glares furiously at her defiant sister, genuinely stunned by the sudden, unbreakable resolve burning brightly in Era's red eyes. Standing her ground with unyielding resolve, the proud woman declares she is finally living her chosen life regardless of others' opinions. A heavy and breathless silence descends as the intense weight of her bold declaration reverberates through the courtyard. She fiercely proclaims that remaining shackled is a far worse fate than enduring worn hands or muddy clothes. Glaring with piercing intensity, she rebukes her detractors by labeling them profoundly pitiful for failing to recognize her truth. Shock ripples abruptly through the gathered crowd as a stunned gasp shatters the tense atmosphere. Enraged by a sudden burst of echoing laughter, the haughty antagonist furiously demands to know what is so amusing. A mysterious newcomer chuckles softly while noting his gladness for taking a walk and witnessing such an intriguing spectacle. Smirking with undeniable charisma, the stranger openly praises her bold words with profound amusement. Furious at the blatant disrespect, the noblewoman fiercely snaps at the newcomer for daring to call her humiliation interesting. Utter confusion washes over the tense scene as an unspoken question hangs heavily in the air. A sudden movement catches everyone completely off guard and violently interrupts the rising hostility. An imposing aura rapidly permeates the courtyard as the true nature of the stranger begins to manifest. Anticipation builds exponentially as mystical energy crackles violently in the immediate surrounding space. A collective gasp echoes through the terrified onlookers as the mysterious figure steps fully into the revealing light. The frightened bystanders freeze in absolute bewilderment while struggling to comprehend the rapidly unfolding chaotic events. Hushed whispers suddenly erupt among the terrified crowd as someone finally recognizes the striking newcomer's identity. Panic and absolute awe spread like wildfire as the crowd identifies the young man as the greatest mage from Kwanda. An onlooker excitedly confirms the legendary identity by screaming the name of the renowned mage Kuro. Stepping forward with an aura of relaxed confidence, Kuro casually greets the stunned and trembling assembly. Observing a familiar face amidst the chaos, Kuro muses aloud that meeting her here must undoubtedly be an act of fate. Completely unfazed by his terrifying reputation, the bold girl demands to know the true identity of the man standing before her. The air crackles with lethal tension as the combatants lock eyes in a profound and deadly standoff. A sudden burst of localized magical distortion abruptly begins to aggressively warp the surrounding physical space. Snapping the bystanders violently back to reality, someone barks a harsh warning not to zone out and block the congested pathway. Trembling with uncontrollable rage, the haughty princess bitterly mutters that she has never experienced such unbelievable humiliation. The furious noblewoman tightly clenches her trembling fists as her immense pride shatters under the overwhelming display of magical dominance. Stuttering in a blind panic, the furious princess threatens to involve her father and deliberately spark a disastrous diplomatic incident. Stepping deliberately closer, Kuro pierces the chaotic noise by declaring he has been trying to convey one single thing this entire time. Time seemingly stops altogether as a blinding flash of raw condensed magical energy violently erupts from his outstretched palm. The overwhelming kinetic shockwave instantly clears the entire crowded area and leaves behind a sudden eerie calm. Stunned completely beyond belief, the isolated girl whispers in absolute shock that everyone has instantaneously vanished into thin air. Kuro casually explains his terrifying power by stating he simply tossed the nuisance crowd into a dense forest 3 kilometers away. Thoroughly enjoying the newfound peace, Kuro advises the stammering girl to head home now that it is finally quiet. Catching her breath in sheer disbelief, the startled girl marvels aloud at the terrifying and genuinely amazing capabilities of elite mages. Kuro turns his back definitively as his dark cloak billows aggressively in the wind while he prepares to depart into the shadows. The girl hesitates for a fleeting second while tightly clutching a small mysterious dropped object in her muddy trembling hands. Summoning every ounce of her remaining courage, she rapidly sprints forward to catch the departing legendary mage's immediate attention. Bursting violently through the quiet stillness of the abandoned courtyard, she nervously calls out to excuse herself. She quickly explains she came solely to return a dropped item before nervously promising to leave the premises right away. The mysterious stranger locks eyes with the stunned herb seller in a heavy silence. A sudden gasp escapes her lips as she reels in absolute shock from the unexpected confrontation. The suffocating tension dramatically rises as their unyielding gazes remain firmly fixed on one another. Frozen perfectly still, the young girl struggles to process the overwhelming aura radiating from the imposing figure. Kuro sternly deduces she must be a skilled mage to bypass his door spell, while she frantically denies it by claiming to be a mere apothecary. Leaning in closer, his piercing glare seemingly looks right through her terrified and defensive facade. Her wide eyes reflect pure panic as the sheer weight of his magical presence completely overwhelms her. Demanding absolute truth, the legendary mage aggressively asks what kind of being she truly is. Pressing the terrifying interrogation, he demands to know her true identity and exactly where she hails from. He fiercely questions how she managed to break through his complex magical defenses and why she infiltrated his domain. Dismissing her claims of being a normal herb seller, he insists no ordinary human could possibly bypass his wards. A sudden sharp sound violently interrupts the tense interrogation and completely shatters the heavy atmosphere. An unexpected newcomer suddenly enters the room and suspiciously asks Kuro if he is up to something due to the outside noise. Visibly annoyed by the sudden intrusion, Kuro aggressively clicks his tongue in deep frustration. Taking immediate advantage of the distraction, the startled girl quickly realizes this is her perfect chance to escape. Without a second thought, she swiftly pivots and prepares to flee from the terrifying magical encounter. Scrambling frantically away, she pushes her exhausted body to its absolute limits to escape the dangerous situation. Trembling from the scary encounter, she reminds herself she only came to return a dropped item as Kuro dismissively tells the newcomer it was no one. Bursting proudly through the entrance door, she rings the shop bell and loudly announces her safe return. Apologizing profusely for taking so long, she quickly hands over the collected money to her grumpy superior. The harsh boss meticulously counts the coins and gruffly confirms the full amount is perfectly present. Demanding even more labor, the boss immediately orders her to produce more of her special salve for next week. Leaning in with immense pressure, he strictly demands her verbal confirmation that she can fulfill the heavy quota. Slightly overwhelmed by the sudden workload, the exhausted apothecary meekly braces herself for the upcoming struggle. She hastily agrees to the daunting task as the boss dismissively tells her to run along. Politely excusing herself, she respectfully bows and quickly exits the suffocating room. The arrogant boss merely scoffs in cruel satisfaction and quietly insults her as an idiot behind her back. Feeling a profound wave of relief that the money is safe, she resolutely vows to do her absolute best with the new job. Sitting down heavily in her quiet space, she complains aloud about her sore soles while finally removing her worn shoes. Letting out a deep and weary sigh, she mutters to herself about the exhausting events of the long day. Realizing the rapid capital trip ended in a flash, she mentally prepares to wake up early tomorrow to gather and dry Recomo herbs. A vivid memory suddenly flashes in her mind of the intense mage commanding her to return tomorrow. Pondering the strange encounter, she softly reflects that the terrifying man was not afraid of her eyes at all. She remembers with striking clarity how the legendary mage boldly glared straight into her unusual eyes. A warm past memory echoes in her heart, pleading with her not to give up on living among people once she leaves this place. The gentle voice lovingly urges her to embrace kindness and strive to live a truly happy life. A quiet chime perfectly punctuates the serene silence of her humble, solitary room. Wincing in sudden sharp pain, she lightly touches her swollen foot and realizes the physical toll of her frantic escape. Resting her weary body, she sits in peaceful solitude while letting the profound events of the day wash over her. Deciding it is the perfect moment, the exhausted apothecary prepares to test her newly crafted medicine. Carefully rolling down her sock, she exposes the painfully swollen injury on her bruised foot. She gently massages the soothing herbal ointment directly into her deeply bruised and inflamed skin. Observing the rapid effects, she notes aloud that the potent mixture seems remarkably effective on swelling. A sudden and suffocating magical pressure violently invades the quiet sanctity of her small apothecary room. Shadows twist unnaturally as an imposing figure suddenly materializes from the very fabric of the air. Appearing out of thin air, Kuro aggressively accuses the startled girl of daring to break their established deal. Recognizing the legendary magician instantly, the terrified apothecary completely freezes in absolute sheer panic. Stammering a frantic apology, she silently questions why the terrifying mage has suddenly tracked her down. Kuro aggressively steps forward while completely dominating the confined space with his overwhelming magical aura. The desperate girl clumsily retreats in a frantic bid to escape his overwhelmingly oppressive presence. Sudden chaotic noises erupt from outside and violently shatter the heavy tension of the terrifying confrontation. Confused by the abrupt magical disruption, the bewildered apothecary quietly wonders what is exactly happening. Visibly frustrated by the terrible timing, Kuro angrily clicks his tongue right as he arrives on the scene. Confirming her exact residence, Kuro sternly promises to return later before abruptly turning away. Glaring fiercely over his shoulder, he strictly commands the trembling girl not to run off again. The overwhelmed apothecary violently shudders as the terrifying legendary mage completely vanishes into thin air. Inspecting her depleted supplies, she realizes with deep dread that she must urgently brew more medicine. Venturing precariously onto a dangerous cliffside, she desperately searches for the specific rare medicinal herbs. Spotting the elusive plants, she gasps in pure excitement while recklessly leaning toward the deadly edge. Disaster strikes instantly as her unstable footing completely crumbles and sends her plunging into the fatal void. Bursting violently onto the scene, Kuro furiously screams at the idiot apothecary while lunging to catch her. Grappling against the fatal momentum, Kuro desperately curses while straining with all his might to hold onto her. Panting heavily from the extreme exertion, Kuro mutters he cannot recall the last time he felt such immense panic. Recovering from the harrowing near-death experience, the incredibly grateful girl nervously asks the exhausted mage if he is all right. Furious at her blatant recklessness, Kuro angrily berates her for scaling a cliff with a ruined foot while she profusely apologizes. Kuro realizes in complete and utter shock that her previously swollen foot has impossibly healed overnight. He forcefully grabs her leg to closely inspect the completely unblemished skin with intense disbelief. Staring intensely at the perfectly healed ankle, Kuro struggles to comprehend the utterly impossible medical anomaly. Denying his immediate accusation of using magic, the flustered apothecary quickly explains she merely applied a special ointment. Kuro warns that Shirokuru is a deadly poison, but she cleverly clarifies the roots possess completely safe anti-inflammatory properties. Deeply impressed by her vast botanical expertise, Kuro genuinely acknowledges her as a highly skilled apothecary. Connecting the bizarre series of clues, Kuro confidently states he finally understands the astounding truth. Standing tall with sudden brilliant realization, Kuro declares he has formulated a definitive theory about her existence. Pointing accusingly directly at the bewildered girl, he prepares to reveal the shocking reality of her unique nature. Kuro boldly proclaims to the stunned apothecary that she is somehow completely immune to all forms of magic. He explains his levitation spell was instantly shattered the exact moment he grabbed her during their terrifying fall. Annoyed by her polite gratitude, Kuro yells that his detection magic failed completely and forced him to search on foot for 3 grueling days. Staring in sheer awe at the impossible girl, Kuro admits he has never heard of anyone who constantly nullifies magic. Kuro intensely interrogates the bewildered girl about the origins of her unique magic-nullifying ability. Pacing around the small room, he demands to know if she was born with the extraordinary trait or if it manifested later. Leaning closer with intense curiosity, he questions whether a powerful curse caused her strange and unprecedented condition. Testing the absolute limits of her condition, he violently unleashes a torrent of magical energy to see how far her immunity actually goes. A sharp magical beam shoots directly toward her face but dissipates harmlessly into the air upon contact. Kuro rapidly fires multiple different spells only to watch them all vanish instantly upon touching her unblemished skin. Utterly fascinated by the impossible results, the legendary mage whispers in sheer absolute awe. Apologizing briefly for his aggressive testing, he boldly declares her the strangest magical anomaly he has ever encountered. Still processing the chaotic revelation, Era softly mutters to herself about her bizarre immunity to all forms of magic. Realizing the truth about his earlier actions, she pieces together that Kuro was actually trying to heal her injured foot. Overwhelmed by the sudden heartwarming realization, a deep blush slowly spreads across her flustered cheeks. Recalling widespread rumors, she remembers that high-level magicians like the legendary Kuro possess incredible healing powers. Staring deeply at the imposing figure, she fondly remembers how he unexpectedly helped her back in the bustling capital. Deciding he is not truly a scary person, she warmly thanks him for everything while wondering how to possibly repay his kindness. Waving off her immense gratitude, Kuro casually states that discovering her unique condition is more than enough reward for his troubles. Pointing directly at her, the imposing mage abruptly shifts his intense focus back to the immediate situation. Flinching under his piercing gaze, Era freezes like a trapped animal cornered by a highly dangerous predator. Attempting a hasty retreat, the terrified girl tries to leave before Kuro sternly commands her to halt her escape. Glaring sharply down at her injured ankle, Kuro strictly points out that her damaged foot is far from fully healed. Demanding immediate answers, the powerful mage aggressively questions the exact location of her current residence. Nervous sweat beads on her pale forehead as she points shakily toward the distant desolate hills. Following her trembling finger, Kuro heavily scrutinizes the completely desolate direction she fearfully indicates. Gesturing vaguely toward a dilapidated structure, she quietly points out her incredibly humble living quarters. Kuro firmly grabs her small shoulder while deeply observing the terrible structural state of her supposed home. Disgusted by the crumbling ruins, Kuro flatly states it is not a real house while she confusingly asks if something is wrong. Staring intently into her unusual eyes, he fiercely demands to know what kind of terrible life she has been enduring. Pressing the harsh interrogation, he intensely questions the whereabouts of her missing parents. Completely overwhelmed by the rapid-fire questions, the flustered apothecary stammers nervously while desperately searching for an acceptable answer. Cutting through her anxious hesitation, Kuro sharply demands her true name, and she meekly introduces herself as Era. Repeating her lovely name aloud, Kuro commits the young apothecary's identity permanently to his incredibly sharp memory. A heavy and contemplative silence fills the tense air as Kuro silently judges her deeply tragic living situation. Clarifying her earlier statement, he forcefully asks if he heard her correctly, and she quietly confirms his dark suspicion. Era explains she has lived there for roughly 2 years while nervously asking if something is truly bothering the intense mage. Refusing to drop the heavy subject, Kuro aggressively pushes to uncover her past before arriving at the lonely ruins. Lowering her head in deep sorrow, Era confesses she was locked away because her strange features were considered terrible omens. A painful memory vividly flashes in her mind as she recalls the freezing snow falling on the terrible day of her cruel exile. Shaking her head rapidly, she desperately tries to suppress the deeply traumatic memories of her dark and lonely past. Clenching her trembling hands tightly, Era softly apologizes and sadly admits she is terribly bad at talking about herself. Surprised by her hidden secret, Kuro realizes her dyed hair is actually naturally white, causing the nervous girl to stammer an embarrassed confirmation. Era averts her gaze timidly while struggling with her deep-seated anxiety about opening up. She quietly confesses she used to read every book in the library but remains terrible at communicating with others. Kuro gently acknowledges her struggles and accepts her brief explanation without any harsh judgment. A heavy silence falls as the towering mage gazes down at the deeply insecure apothecary. He bluntly states that peddling herbs to merely scrape by is a tragic waste of her unique talents. Kuro points out her immense value by highlighting her extensive apothecary knowledge and sheer invulnerability to magic. Stepping closer, he insists many powerful people would kill to recruit someone with her unprecedented abilities. The legendary mage firmly declares she is far more valuable than she could ever realize. Era stammers in complete disbelief because no one has ever spoken such incredibly kind words to her. Locking eyes with her, Kuro boldly and unapologetically states that he wants her. The unexpected declaration completely shatters Era's fragile composure and leaves her utterly speechless. She stares at him with wide eyes while desperately trying to process the overwhelming and sudden moment. Kuro maintains his intense stare while waiting patiently for her panicked mind to catch up. A deep blush violently paints her pale cheeks as the sheer weight of his words finally sinks in. Breaking the tension, Kuro calmly clarifies his statement by formally offering her a position to work under him. Back at the Grand Palace, Kuro casually drops a heavy bag while preparing for an unknown errand. An inquisitive colleague suddenly approaches Kuro to investigate his unusually rare presence in the royal halls. The curious man demands to know where the elusive mage constantly disappears to every single day. Kuro casually dismisses the interrogation by revealing he was simply asked to find a suitable gift for someone. Utterly flabbergasted by the shocking news, the loud colleague screams in sheer disbelief about the antisocial Kuro buying a gift. Returning to the dilapidated ruins, Kuro suddenly presents Era with a beautiful bundle of thick winter clothing. He gruffly explains that watching her walk around in thin clothes right before winter makes him feel terribly cold. Flustered by the generous gesture, Era frantically tries to refuse the expensive gift because she has done nothing to deserve it. Kuro flashes a charming smirk and admits he is just trying to bribe his way into her good graces while awaiting her final answer. Clutching the warm fabric, Era finally realizes the legendary mage is completely serious about his incredibly generous job offer. She looks up timidly and softly asks if he truly wants to hire someone as broken as her. Seeking genuine clarity, she nervously questions why the greatest mage alive specifically chose her over anyone else. Kuro explains he desperately needs to study her magic nullifying ability to further his complex magical research. He sweetens the incredible deal by promising her limitless pay and the complete freedom to continue her apothecary work in Kwanda. Overwhelmed by the surreal opportunity, Era quietly marvels at the impossible reality of someone actually wanting to employ her. She anxiously points to her unusual features and asks if her strange dragon-colored eyes genuinely do not bother him. Kuro immediately scoffs at her deep insecurities and declares such superficial prejudices are utterly ridiculous in his homeland. He casually dismisses the bigoted mindset by stating physical appearances do not matter in a vastly diverse world. Staring intently into her unique eyes, he gently insists she would look far more beautiful if she fully embraced her natural traits. Era silently ponders the massive magical nation of Kwanda while battling the dark rumors she previously heard back in town. A sudden mysterious ringing noise abruptly interrupts the quiet and intimate conversation between the two. She nervously points out the strange sound, but Kuro casually waves it off as a non-urgent magical nuisance. Looking down at the warm clothes, Era deeply contemplates the terrifying but exciting prospect of starting completely over. Resolving her internal conflict, she decides to push away her lingering doubts and properly give Kuro her final answer tomorrow. Staring intently at the blinding 3,000,000% marker, the mysterious figure suddenly realizes that something monumental has begun. In the tense silence that follows, the surrounding atmosphere grows incredibly heavy with an unspoken and looming anticipation. The tension continues to build silently in the quiet void, stretching the suspense to its absolute breaking point. Without a single word uttered, the silent confrontation deepens as the shadows stretch endlessly across the environment. The quiet stillness reigns supreme, forcing the heart to pound furiously against the heavy and unbroken silence of the moment. Every breath feels magnified in the profound quiet as the invisible weight of destiny presses down aggressively on the scene. The breathless pause lingers agonizingly, setting the ultimate stage for the dramatic morning encounter that is about to erupt. Startled completely out of his quiet daze, the man flinches violently as his visitor smoothly steps into view, cheerfully greeting him with a bright good morning. Explaining her early morning herb-gathering mission, the hard-working woman declares that she is urgently delivering the freshly picked plants to the village because they requested them immediately. Examining the harvested bundle, the man hesitantly advises her to carefully select the younger and softer herbs if possible, prompting her to questioningly hold up her current pick. Thoroughly bewildered by his specific botanical critique, she fiercely questions what he could possibly mean by demanding younger plants. A pregnant pause hangs heavily in the morning air as the herbalist's confusing instructions linger unresolved between the two companions. The quiet stillness stretches onward, allowing the sheer awkwardness of the sudden botanical interrogation to fully settle in. Without another word spoken, the tense yet mundane standoff silently transitions toward a grudging mutual understanding. Bowing respectfully, the grateful villager enthusiastically shouts a loud thank you for all the incredible help they received. Breaking the comfortable silence with a hesitant stammer, the companion nervously brings up a lingering offer that has been heavily occupying their thoughts. Frowning in deep suspicion, the observant individual sharply points out that something about the current situation absolutely does not add up. Scrutinizing the baffling circumstances from every possible angle, they firmly conclude that the entire scenario is undeniably strange. Glaring intensely at their modest surroundings, the companion aggressively questions why someone with such incredibly valuable skills would choose to live in such a surprisingly humble state. Desperately trying to deflect the praise by insisting she is completely fine with what she has, the humble herbalist vehemently pushes back against the companion's fierce command to not sell herself short. Leaning in with unwavering conviction, the companion fiercely argues that the talented woman should undeniably be working somewhere that is truly worthy of her extraordinary capabilities. Tears of sheer frustration threatening to spill, she fiercely defends her humble home, passionately declaring that he couldn't possibly understand the immense pride of living in the very first place she painstakingly built from scratch. Standing her ground with absolute and unwavering resolve, she firmly and proudly declares her profound love for her self-made sanctuary. Stumbling over his words in a sudden wave of awkward regret, the man stammers nervously as she emotionally reiterates that she simply cannot ever leave this cherished place. Hanging his head in deep and solemn remorse, he quietly issues a sincere apology for his previously aggressive and overstepping remarks. Softening her fierce stance, she calmly and confidently reassures him that she is genuinely content and completely fine with exactly the way things currently are. Radiating a brilliant aura of newfound self-worth, she proudly proclaims that she is no longer the useless person of her past because she is actively and meaningfully helping people now. A profound silence envelopes the humble clinic as her powerful declaration of self-worth resonates deeply within the walls. The quiet atmosphere breathes a soothing sigh of relief, washing away the earlier tension with a renewed sense of peaceful purpose. Basking in the gentle glow of true contentment, she smiles warmly, insisting that being surrounded by such kind people leaves her with absolutely nothing more to wish for in life. A serene expression of ultimate peace washes over her face as she fully embraces the quiet and unshakable joy of living a genuinely happy life. Suddenly shattering the peaceful calm, a bustling delivery person bursts through the door, loudly announcing the arrival of a massive 45,000-unit shipment. The abrupt interruption hangs sharply in the air, instantly shifting the serene atmosphere into one of unexpected confusion. Tilting her head in utter bewilderment, the deeply confused herbalist utters a hesitant and questioning sound at the unexpected massive delivery. Frantically scrambling through her mental calendar, she nervously mutters to herself, wondering in rising panic if she somehow got the delivery day completely wrong. Exploding into the room with terrifying unbridled fury, an angry mob aggressively points their fingers directly at her, viciously screaming that a disastrous mistake is entirely her fault. Completely blindsided by the sudden and violent accusations, the stunned woman can only gasp a confused and breathless "huh" in response. Lunging forward with venomous rage, the furious accuser violently screams, demanding to know if she maliciously switched the crucial medicine. Desperately struggling against their violent physical grip, she frantically begs them to let her go as they mercilessly roar that the medicine she sent to the hospital was completely wrong. Screaming with unbridled fury, the ruined merchant loudly declares his customers refuse to ever buy from him again. Ignoring her frantic questions about the victims and the mixed medicine, the furious accuser viciously screams that the details no longer matter. Desperately pleading for them to stop, she cowers as the enraged man orders her to stay quiet until he turns her in tomorrow to prove his innocence. The violent struggle reaches a chaotic breaking point as the tension explosively shatters the brief standoff. A sudden physical clash rips through the air, violently exposing a deeply hidden secret. Shock completely paralyzes the aggressive crowd as an unbelievable truth forcefully reveals itself in the dim light. The heavy silence perfectly amplifies the horrifying realization washing over the stunned faces of the villagers. Staring in absolute terror at her glaring red eyes, the panicked mob wildly screams that she is a monstrous dragon. Viciously turning on her, the terrified crowd aggressively condemns the lying monster for hiding her true terrifying nature. Trembling under their immense hatred, she desperately and tragically insists she is completely human. A cold and ruthless voice piercing the chaotic panic aggressively demands they hurry up and kill her immediately. Spitting venomous insults, the cruel villagers swear they knew she was a creepy doll from the very start and refused to use her tainted medicine. The crushing weight of their hatred violently slams into her, fracturing her remaining hopeful resolve. Utter despair violently seizes her heart as she silently braces for the inevitable violent mob attack. A condescending voice dripping with vile mockery cruelly pities the poor sister caught in the brutal crossfire. A sudden and powerful presence abruptly crashes into the hostile environment, bringing the murderous frenzy to a complete halt. Stepping fearlessly into the absolute chaos, a mysterious newcomer firmly demands to know what exactly is going on here. Frantically pointing at the terrified herbalist, the panicked mob wildly orders the stranger to kill the disguised dragon before she murders them all. Calmly observing she looks perfectly human, the newcomer easily ignores the accuser stammering that she intentionally ruined him by switching the medicine. Fighting through her immense terror, she fiercely and desperately denies the horrific accusation of switching the crucial medicine. Scoffing openly at the utter absurdity, the confident stranger sharply questions why a mighty dragon would ever bother switching human medicine. Narrowing his eyes dangerously, he coldly suggests that only a greedy lowlife would cowardly pin the blame on others to cover their own mistakes. Boiling with absolute rage, the insulted accuser furiously steps forward aggressively demanding to know who this arrogant intruder thinks he is. Unveiling his overwhelming aura, the confident stranger proudly introduces himself as Kuro, the chief mage. He flawlessly completes his imposing title, cementing his absolute authority as the premier mage of the kingdom of Kwando. Stunned, completely speechless, the terrified villagers realize the greatest mage alive used an alias simply to recruit the humble herbalist. Dropping his polite facade, Kuro coldly notes the obvious issue the aggressive mob clearly has with his chosen recruit. Cowardly backtracking in pure terror, the desperate accuser frantically orders Kuro to take her and leave immediately to avoid any trouble. Refusing the pathetic retreat, Kuro dangerously declares he will clear up these tedious false accusations right here and right now. Locking his piercing gaze on the trembling ringleader, Kuro chillingly calls out the man directly by his full name, Marcus Denlick. While Marcus violently flinches in absolute shock, Kuro ominously orders him to keep everything he knows about the girl entirely to himself. Kuro darkly reminds the paralyzed crowd that powerful mages can effortlessly curse anyone if they possess their target's true name and a medium. A terrifying magical pressure violently erupts from Kuro, utterly suffocating the terrified mob with silent dread. The immense crushing weight of Kuro's magical threat violently forces the cowardly villagers into absolute silent submission. Turning his back completely on the thoroughly defeated mob, the imposing chief mage coldly bids them farewell. Throwing a final terrifying glance over his shoulder, Kuro ominously dares the paralyzed villagers to try not to get cursed. The suffocating tension finally shatters completely as Kuro forcefully leads the rescued herbalist away from the ruined clinic. Breaking the heavy silence, the exhausted herbalist stammers nervously as she softly offers a deeply hesitant apology to her powerful savior. Trailing off mid-sentence, her uncertain words violently hang in the air as they stride toward an unknown future. Reassuring the young woman with unwavering confidence, Kuro declares her toxic ties to the rotten village are gone forever and she will never be exploited again. Praising her immense inner strength, he gently assures her that she did exceptionally well standing up for herself. Staring downward with profound sorrow, she tearfully confesses her tragically misguided belief that merely being useful to others would bring her true happiness. Trembling under the crushing emotional weight, she quietly admits she truly believed subservient obedience was the absolute definition of joy. A heavy silence completely engulfs the quiet atmosphere as the painful emotional weight of her profound realization slowly settles into reality. Watching her process the devastating truth, the powerful mage patiently allows the overwhelming sorrow to peacefully run its natural course. Shattering the solemn quiet, Kuro firmly commands the weary herbalist to boldly be much greedier with her own personal desires from now on. The sudden and powerful command lingers dynamically in the air, instantly shifting her melancholic aura toward a spark of newfound resolve. Smiling with charming confidence, Kuro playfully nudges her toward a brighter future by casually mentioning his highly attractive contract terms. Catching her breath in sheer disbelief, the young woman silently contemplates the incredibly life-changing offer placed gently before her. Bowing deeply with immense gratitude, Eira stammers a polite greeting and officially places her fragile future in Kuro's highly capable care. Igniting with fierce newfound resolve, she passionately vows to actively seek a place where she can live freely and truly grasp her own happiness. Meanwhile, at the mage headquarters, frantic colleagues wildly interrogate each other upon discovering the absolutely shocking rumor that Kuro gave a mysterious woman clothes. Scoffing with immense irritation, a frustrated mage bitterly complains that the incredibly rude Kuro completely ignores all of their urgent magical calls. Pondering the bizarre and unbelievable gossip, another bewildered colleague deeply questions the sheer impossibility of the solitary Kuro traveling alongside a woman. Sighing in absolute helpless resignation, the overwhelmed mages reluctantly accept the frustratingly mysterious situation with a quiet collective murmur. The vibrant scene shifts dynamically back to the tranquil wilderness as the newly formed duo's grand journey rapidly accelerates onward. Searching the empty campsite in mild confusion, Kuro mutters to himself, wondering exactly where Era vanished since their reliable horse is clearly still present. Calculating their swift and steady travel pace, he confidently notes they will easily reach the bustling capital city by noon. Stepping carefully through the dense rustling foliage, Kuro gently calls out Era's name to warmly announce his safe return to the camp. Startled slightly by his sudden silent approach, Era warmly welcomes the powerful mage back to their peaceful temporary sanctuary. Hesitantly touching her brilliant white locks, Era nervously admits she was seriously thinking about completely stopping the highly stressful hair dyeing process. Quickly misinterpreting his silent and intense gaze, she anxiously second-guesses herself and nervously asks if she should just continue dyeing it after all. Looking down in profound embarrassment, she sadly assumes her completely pure white hair looks weird and unnatural to the observing mage. Instantly correcting her massive, self-deprecating misunderstanding, Kuro gently clarifies that her unique hair is not weird but genuinely mystical. A profound wave of absolute shock brightly illuminates Era's delicate face as the beautiful and unexpected compliment finally fully registers. Blushing intensely at his own rare display of unexpected sincerity, Kuro awkwardly clears his throat and firmly confirms it was indeed a genuine compliment. Desperately shifting the emotional focus, the highly flustered mage swiftly commands them to pack up and immediately resume their swift travel. Galloping powerfully across the sweeping sunlit landscape, their trusty steed rapidly carries them ever closer to their magnificent grand destination. The majestic glowing horizon begins to slowly unfold, dynamically revealing sweeping gorgeous vistas of the beautiful magic-infused surrounding kingdom. Riding steadily onward through the picturesque terrain, the quiet companionship smoothly strengthens between the newly bonded traveling pair. Pointing excitedly toward the distant glowing horizon, Kuro confidently tells Era she will very soon witness something incredibly shiny up ahead. Squinting curiously into the blinding magical distance, Era loudly wonders what the massive glowing phenomenon could possibly be. An absolutely breathtaking and towering view dramatically explodes into crystal-clear focus as they rapidly reach the precipice of the overlooking cliff. Gesturing grandly at the incredibly massive glowing structure, Kuro proudly introduces the awe-inspiring and colossal sight as Simald the Royal. The colossal radiant tree towers majestically over the sprawling capital city below, bathing the entire kingdom in absolute glowing magical splendor. Explaining the kingdom's profound magical affinity, Kuro casually theorizes the immense regional power comes directly from the massive tree's radiant ancient blessing. Using a highly vivid biological metaphor, he cleverly compares the massive tree's powerful trunk to a beating heart pumping magical blood through deeply rooted veins. Concluding his fascinating and grand lecture, Kuro passionately states mages inherently believe they are intimately connected directly to the majestic world tree's circulating lifeblood roots. Gazing upward in sheer wonder, Era softly recalls reading about the legendary world tree in an old book. Overwhelmed by the majestic reality, she breathes out in utter amazement that she actually made it all this way. Breaking her trance, Kuro smoothly pivots the plan and suggests they head straight to his place first. Her eyes sparkling with boundless excitement, Era eagerly anticipates finally seeing the mysterious mage's actual home. The bustling cityscape seamlessly gives way to a quiet and serene approaching pathway. Looming grandly into view, an expansive and breathtaking estate violently shatters all her modest expectations. The majestic structure stands beautifully against the vibrant magical backdrop, radiating an aura of ancient power. Stepping onto the pristine grounds, a wave of absolute tranquility washes over the stunned young herbalist. Gesturing casually toward the magnificent property, Kuro generously offers the entire place as her new temporary home. Her face instantly lighting up with pure joy, Era absorbs the incredibly generous invitation with a bright smile. Spinning around happily, she enthusiastically gushes over how incredibly adorable her grand new sanctuary truly is. Marveling at the lush botanical garden, she nearly stumbles as Kuro dryly warns her not to trip on the pathway. Peering excitedly into the crystal-clear pond, she receives another deadpan warning from Kuro to avoid falling in. Wandering deeper into the massive estate, she continuously marvels at the incredibly spacious layout surrounding her. Entering the pristine culinary area, she loudly praises the shockingly clean and spotless kitchen. Shrugging indifferently, Kuro bluntly admits he rarely ever cooks since the room shows absolutely zero trace of use. Blushing slightly at the domestic thought, Era silently wonders if the great mage would actually eat a meal she cooked. The quiet domestic atmosphere deepens as the duo continues exploring the expansive living quarters. Glancing around inquisitively, Era tilts her head as she takes in the unique magical architecture filling the hallway. Her boundless curiosity drives her forward as she eagerly inspects every fascinating nook and cranny of the house. Discovering a luxurious sleeping chamber, she gasps in pure delight upon spotting an incredibly comfortable bed. Smirking at her sheer fascination, Kuro casually encourages her to try sitting on the impossibly soft mattress. Bracing herself with joyful anticipation, she excitedly prepares to test the plush and inviting furniture. Launching herself forward with childish glee, Era happily bounces directly onto the center of the plush bed. Slipping unexpectedly on the silky sheets, she flails wildly in a moment of clumsy panic. Watching her adorable mishap, Kuro breaks his stoic facade and lets out a rare burst of genuine laughter. Reassuring her she can use the main house freely, Kuro firmly states he will be occupying the adjacent area. A heavy click echoes through the hall as a heavily enchanted door slowly creaks open. Pointing to the ominous threshold, Kuro calmly explains he usually spends all his time on the other side. Taunting her playfully, he asks if she wants to try entering while confidently predicting she definitely cannot. A powerful magical barrier visually shimmers into existence, perfectly blocking the mysterious forbidden doorway. Driven by stubborn curiosity, Era bravely reaches out to test the glowing magical ward. Bouncing harmlessly off the invisible shield, she recoils slightly from the surprisingly firm arcane rejection. Pouting heavily in adorable defeat, she listens to Kuro smugly declare that he absolutely knew she would fail. A sudden magical anomaly disrupts the playful banter, pulling their immediate attention toward the open window. Startled by the abrupt arrival, Era wildly questions the sudden appearance of a strange glowing bird. Swooping gracefully into the room, the magical avian construct rapidly begins to shift and morph. Staring in absolute disbelief, she watches the majestic bird seamlessly transform directly into a sealed letter. Recognizing the official royal summons, Kuro sighs heavily, acknowledging his immediate forced departure to the castle. Reminding her of the protective wards, Kuro warmly tells Era she is completely free to safely wander the nearby forest. Gazing out at the lush greenery, Era eagerly anticipates exploring the mysterious woods later. Pausing suddenly before his departure, Kuro urgently calls out her name to share something incredibly important. Warning her of greedy individuals, Kuro firmly orders Era to absolutely never reveal her dangerous magic nullifying ability to anyone. Smiling reassuringly, she happily agrees to keep the crucial secret while admitting she never even noticed the power back home anyway. Shifting to a brighter topic, Kuro generously promises to introduce her directly to the elite royal apothecaries once things finally settle down. Utterly stunned by the massive opportunity, Era gasps in pure disbelief at the incredibly generous offer. Firmly reminding her that her apothecary duties must always come first, Kuro prepares to leave while urging her to remember the doorknob's ward. Bowing with profound gratitude, Era cheerfully thanks him for everything and warmly tells him to take care on his journey. Standing quietly at the enchanted threshold, Kuro silently absorbs her surprisingly warm domestic farewell. Softening his stoic expression, Kuro quietly mutters a gentle agreement before finally stepping out into the world. Bursting with unchecked curiosity, Era happily decides to take a very quick exploratory look around the vibrant woods. Thrilled by the vastly different terrain and climate, she excitedly wonders exactly what incredible new herbs might naturally grow here. Determined to impress the royal apothecaries, Era firmly resolves to be perfectly prepared by the time Kuro formally introduces her. Walking purposefully through the tranquil woods, she quietly repeats Kuro's empowering advice to boldly be much more selfish from now on. The peaceful forest atmosphere deeply envelopes her as she completely immerses herself in the vibrant and magical environment. Strolling beneath the towering canopy, she hopefully wonders if the townspeople would actually greet her kindly if she stopped hiding her unique features. Gasping in absolute delight, Era excitedly discovers a rare and highly sought-after batsha plant thriving wildly in the brush. Marveling at the massive oversized leaves, she keenly observes that this magical forest feels drastically different from the woods back in town. Connecting the mystical clues, Era astutely deduces that the incredibly lush botanical growth must be the direct result of the world tree's powerful influence. Kneeling down carefully to inspect the vibrant flora, she happily decides she must meticulously note this exact gathering location. Spotting an unexpected man-made object resting in the dirt, she confusingly wonders why a book is just lying out in the wild. Picking up the discarded novel titled Mary's Dream, she fondly recalls how the village girls used to wildly gossip about this exact story. Staring at the beautifully bound cover with deep fascination, the sheltered herbalist quietly admits she has never actually read a real novel before. Violently shattering the peaceful silence, a sharp and aggressive voice suddenly yells out from somewhere high above her. Hovering ominously in the midair, the mysterious young stranger harshly demands to know exactly what Era is doing sneaking around down there. Staring upward in utter bewilderment, Era stammers a completely confused response while marveling that the aggressive girl is effortlessly floating. Desperately trying to explain her innocent presence, Era nervously reveals that she is officially going to be living on the estate for a while. Glaring down with supreme and cruel arrogance, the floating stranger bluntly insults Era by asking if the white-haired intruder is a senile grandma. Realizing the harsh visual misunderstanding, Era awkwardly touches her pure white locks as the incredibly rude insult fully registers. The haughty magical intruder continues aggressively hovering while silently and judgmentally scrutinizing the highly flustered herbalist. Annoyed by the awkward silence, the floating newcomer sharply snaps, demanding to know if the stunned Era is even listening to her. Swooping down rapidly for a much closer inspection, the arrogant stranger violently flinches in absolute shock upon realizing Era is actually incredibly young. Narrowing her eyes in deep theatrical suspicion, the mysterious girl dramatically accuses Era of secretly being Kuro's scandalous hidden woman. Completely overwhelmed by the massive and absurd accusation, Era frantically stammers that she was merely hired by the powerful mage. Hovering aggressively, the arrogant stranger fiercely declares that if Kuro ever needed a companion it would be her, and violently insults Era as a useless runt. Remembering Kuro's strict warning to hide her magic nullification, Era stays quiet as the infuriated stranger demands to know how she managed to get hired. Stuttering nervously, Era admits she was merely making medicine in the forest, which heavily confuses her hostile interrogator. Glaring with cold obsession, the mysterious girl fiercely proclaims that the great Kuro is ultimately meant to be entirely alone. A heavy and suffocating tension dynamically settles over the silent forest as the two women lock eyes in a fierce standoff. Pointing a threatening finger, the hovering magician dangerously targets the confused herbalist. Era gasps in sudden surprise as a strange, shifting energy abruptly disrupts the intense magical confrontation. Shock violently shatters the stranger's arrogant expression as she realizes her levitation magic has completely vanished. Cursing fiercely under her breath, the arrogant magician abruptly plummets directly toward the unforgiving forest floor. Landing harshly in the dirt, the humiliated magician scrambles awkwardly to recover her lost composure. Muttering quietly to herself about the incredibly bizarre encounter, Era smartly decides to immediately head back to the safety of the estate. Greeting her upon her return, Kuro directly asks if she boldly ventured out into the surrounding forest. Smiling brightly, Era eagerly reports discovering incredibly rare herbs while Kuro warmly praises her excellent botanical work. Pausing thoughtfully, Era casually mentions encountering a mysterious stranger wandering nearby in the woods. Describing the intruder precisely, Era notes the woman was a magician possessing long black hair and a unique forehead ornament. A sudden flash of dark recognition violently disrupts Kuro's normally stoic and calm demeanor. Narrowing his eyes sharply, Kuro urgently questions if she just encountered this mysterious woman directly in the nearby forest. Tilting her head in pure confusion, Era innocently asks if Kuro personally knows this aggressive magical stranger. Deeply suspicious, Kuro firmly notes that there are absolutely no other houses located anywhere in this secluded area. Staring blankly ahead, the powerful mage coldly absorbs the highly troubling new information. Pushing for clarity, Era directly questions the true identity of the dangerous black-haired woman. Kuro grimly reveals the hostile intruder is definitely Sarah, the notoriously dangerous rogue magician. Explaining the strict magical society, Kuro states most magic users permanently belong to a recognized family, nation, or official guild. Highlighting the immense danger, he clarifies that unaligned magic users are officially labeled as rogues and actively treated as extreme threats by everyone. Warning her of the unpredictable peril, Kuro firmly states that a powerful magician possessing completely unclear motives remains a massive risk to society. Staring intensely at his new apprentice, Kuro urgently commands Era to immediately call him if the dangerous Sarah ever shows up again. Firmly ordering Era to absolutely never go near her again, the scene dynamically shifts back to the seething Sarah, who furiously deems Era's presence beside Kuro utterly unforgivable. Trembling with unbridled jealousy and dark obsession, Sarah fiercely curses the innocent herbalist into the silent forest air.